Welcome, Heidi. How are you today, Heidi?
I'm very well, thank you, Leonie. And how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, welcome to everyone who's listening at the moment to my podcast channel. And today we'll be talking about strategies to manage your career. And Heidi will be talking through how she helps identify the target market for her clients to succeed in their job search and their career, and then talk about networking strategies where then you will be meeting with people within industry to build your networks to potentially secure the next opportunity. So Heidi, thank you very much for being on the channel today.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, everyone, I just want to like to just let you know how I know Heidi. Heidi Winney, she is the Director of Strategic Career Development. And I met Heidi many years ago at a networking event through the Career Development Association of Australia. Many years back, I was more a little inexperienced, and meeting with many other coaches really helped me gain more confidence in my practice. And in recent years, Heidi and myself and Leonie Stanfield were part of a networking group, like a mastermind group for career coaches called Creative Careers Entrepreneurs. And in this network, we actually meet and talk through what we're doing in our businesses and what we consider is best practice, and we learn from each other. And over the years, Heidi's also has supported me in my business. She's attended many of my events, and certainly we have a beautiful working relationship. So moving along in terms of her background, as I mentioned, she is the director of her own practice for more than 21 years now, and that business is called Strategic Career Development. She really enjoys and coaches managers, executives, and professional people in navigating their career and to gain clarity in their unique value proposition, their strengths and their skills, expanding their options and possibilities. Welcome, Heidi, to our to our podcast today. And I have the first question for you, which is, tell us about your career and business journey, Heidi.
Okay, thank you for this introduction, Leonie. Well, as you've said, for the last 21 years or so, I have managed my own business. And I've been very privileged working with a very diverse client group over the last number of years, and in various industry sectors, including MBA students from many different backgrounds and different countries internationally, which has been great work. I've also been very much involved in the career transition work, and that has also been extremely satisfying, where I've done things like coached people in writing their own resumes with me as their editor, helping them with their cover letters, and particularly so LinkedIn, which has become the go-to platform really for any career professional. I've helped prepare people for interviews, particularly also with regard to job search strategies, so looking at the market strategically rather than jumping on the closest job board. I've run workshops on many different topics, career related, about managing their career, also on networking, resume writing, LinkedIn, etc. My backstory includes a number of different corporate environment roles in management. And prior to me making a transition into the career management profession, I was an HR manager in the corporate environment. And that really led me to HR consulting, which I did for a number of years in different industry sectors, different companies, again in the corporate environment. And through a serendipity, I was approached by a management consultant that I was doing HR consulting with about the new profession of career transition work, which was really new in Australia at the time. And this is really how I came to be in this particular profession. And I must say, it's been the best move I've made yet. I still really love helping people and seeing them progress to where they want to be. So that's really a bit of a snapshot of my career.
Thank you, Heidi. So the first question we have is around when it comes to business, as you know, in business planning, we identify our own target market in business to have a successful business. So when professionals are looking for work, first they need to identify their target market. What do you do with your clients to help them identify their target market?
Okay. Well, often people say to me when I ask the question, where would you like to go if you could choose? And I would get the answer, well, I'm not really fussy. I don't care. As long as I get a good job that is aligned with my needs and my experience and so on. So the first or the next question then I ask people is, so if I asked you then where you don't want to work, how would you answer that question then? And many times it is a process of elimination. In other words, I don't want to work in tobacco because I'm a non-smoker. I don't want to work in gambling because that's against my values. I really am not interested. Or I'm really not interested in pharmaceuticals because I'm very much into healthcare. So natural healthcare, that is. So we start with what people don't want to do. And if they still haven't got much clarity, I ask them what they read about in the media. What do they follow? Do they follow the finance area? Do they follow particular organizations, maybe in energy or renewables or anything to do with agriculture? So it is a process of elimination. And until you explain to people why it's important, it's hard for them to necessarily choose anything. So my next question then would be around how will you network to people in the companies and the industries if you don't really care where you work? How would you have that conversation? And you must do research into, let's say you want to go into the fintech sector, which is really growing, and you know nothing about it. It's not very genuine if you approach somebody to ask them all about the industry and you haven't done any research yourself. You really do need to have some idea as to why you want to work there, why it's important for you to be talking to somebody in that sector. And then usually my clients do get a better idea as to why it is important, because the networking is part of the strategic job search. So also LinkedIn sometimes it gives you a clue about what people's interests are when you look at who they follow. So that's the other part of identifying the target market. If you're following a certain company like Richard Branson, say, maybe you're very much into entrepreneurship and you want to have your target market as the startups or the started ups. So that's why I feel it's important for clients to really do have a focus on the target market.
I totally agree. I totally agree. So are there any other pointers around that to help clients identify exactly who their target market is?
Sometimes it is going through their resume and really asking them, what did you enjoy about this particular company? So I see you've worked for BHP. What did you like about the mining industry? Which parts were the most enjoyable? Which didn't you enjoy? So that can also lead to a little bit more clarity, where they say, well, I really don't want to work there again. Or they've worked in telco and they know everything there is to know about telcos, and they've decided, no, I'm bored with that industry now, so I want to move away from it, but I'm going to look at technology as the next sector because it's related.
Mm.
So the conversation and the questioning is really how we get to a point of clarity. And you don't
Yes.
have to choose one sector. It's okay to choose 2 or 3 at the same time.
Yes.
So otherwise it becomes a little bit difficult if there's only one.
Yes, and that's the beauty about coaching, is that I can ask clients these questions
Mhm.
to get them to think and be curious
Yes.
as to next steps.
Yeah.
And is there a marketing plan that you work with your clients that you
Yes.
develop? You do?
Again, the part of the networking process and of course the target market process is the strategic marketing plan.
Mm.
And I usually encourage people to complete such a thing because the marketing plan gives them a plan on a page, if you like. So the things that are included in a marketing plan, obviously, are what do I want to do? What are, let's say, 2 related but not necessarily same roles that I'm researching? What do I want to do? And again, clarity in role is really, really important before you can go out there marketing yourself.
Yes.
So the clarity of roles is important. And then, of course, what are your competencies? What are your skills? What is your experience that will be transferable to what you're researching? So it's very important to also have clarity on that, which again is part of the marketing plan. What do I offer?
Yes.
And then the type of company. Is it a multinational? Is it a small company? Is it a small to medium company where you get breadth of role rather than depth of role?
Yes.
And geographic location. Sydney is one of these places where it's very hard to navigate around. And if it's going to take you an hour and a half to get to work and an hour and a half to get home again, is that sustainable? Well, no, it's not longer term, unless the company's moving or unless you want to make a move.
Mm.
Then, of course, you need to look at your company list. If you've chosen, say, 2 or 3 industry sector, who are the companies that you'd like to target? So that's where the research comes in, and you can use organizations like IBISWorld to do a bit of industry research, very important. And of course, the people list. So therefore, LinkedIn is a fantastic database of so many different people. And if you've got a lot of connections on LinkedIn, you can do the research. You can search for people. You can search for companies, and then people who work in those companies. So it's a tremendous tool to really get to the people you want to get to.
Yes. Which leads us to the next question, Heidi.
Yeah.
And that is about networking. Why do you think professionals find it hard to network, and what tips do you have?
Well, the reason I think that people often find it hard to network is because they don't really understand what networking is. Often, when I ask the question around networking or bring the topic up, it's, oh no, I'm really uncomfortable with that because I don't want to ask people for favors. I'm really, really averse to doing that. So the extroverts aren't going to have a problem with that. The introverts will certainly have a bit of an issue and need more preparation. And so I usually begin by discussing, well, what's your perception of networking? Why do we do it? Why am I encouraging you to do it? And it is, once I explain that it isn't about asking people for favor, it's asking people for advice. It's doing your research with people who have some information you may want. It's building relationships, and that's the number one strategy, building those relationships with people you don't know or re-establishing relationships with people you do know and haven't worked with perhaps for 2 years or haven't seen for 2 years. So you've got to re-establish the relationship before you can ask questions that you may want to ask, and asking people for time.
Mm.
So lack of clarity about what they want. And I have a little bit of a story about this very thing that happened very, very recently. I was asking, I was talking to one of my clients about networking, and she is also a little bit uncomfortable. So we talked about her reaching out to a contact that she had worked with and that she actually knew quite well. And I mean, reciprocal, they both knew each other well. This particular contact sent her a role, identified a role for her, and the role was quite different to what she wanted to do. It was one she could do, but not one she wanted to do. Big difference.
Mm.
And so I said, so what was your conversation with this contact? Oh, well, I asked this guy to let me know if he hears of something. Now, that is definitely not clarity. It means this guy will have a perception about what this person can do, but has no clarity about how to help her. And so I said, what if you had said, this is the role I'm looking for, and this is the industry sector that I'm really favoring at the moment? How might this have led to a better outcome? And of course, she understood that the message that you're sending is, of course, very, very important. So before you can network, you need to have clarity around what you're looking for. What is your career direction? So you've got to be helpable. And if you're not helpable, then you are going to end up with the same result a number of times. If you want to make a change in direction, so let's say you're a marketing person, but you want to go into product development. There are lots of transferable skills that people have that will lead them into that type of role. But there's nothing like talking to somebody who is a product manager, product development manager, sorry. And if you're talking to somebody who's doing the job, 2 or 3 people who are doing that type of job, you get clarity around, is this really what I want? Is it what I think it is? The job boards will give you some clarity around what the role is, what the common requirements are for someone in that role, what the gaps may be. But then your question also can be, how do I get into it from where I am now? What education, what further education do I need to do? What are the stepping stones? So there's lots of advice you can get from your network. And, the more people you talk to, the more people will know of you. And that's, again, the beauty of networking. And every time you talk to somebody, you can also ask, who else do you think I should talk to? Who else do you know that I would really benefit from reaching out to? So that's really where the networking is critical in managing your career, because you can definitely outstay a company. You can stay in a company for 10 years and suddenly find at the end of the 10 years, oh my goodness, I haven't managed my career.
Yes.
I haven't been anywhere else.
You hear that a lot, right, Heidi?
Sorry?
We hear that quite a bit.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and of course, you need to start the networking process. Let's say you're in a role, you're becoming bored, and you know when you're becoming bored, it's harder to get out of bed in the morning. And so you're thinking, well, okay, I've been doing this for a while, so I really would like to move to a different industry sector. It can take 6 to 8 months before you can make a move, particularly if it's not just applying for jobs. Because with networking, you don't know if there's a job, but you can create a job for yourself. If you have something to offer that's unique in a company that needs it, i.e., if you're looking at business process improvement, you can go to a number of different organizations and industry sectors and offer that. You can go into consulting and offer that. So, that is an area that may be unique to you, and it can be of real benefit to somebody else. And new professions like the cyber security now, it's a big area and becoming increasingly important.
Yes, I loved what you just shared with us around you can actually create the opportunity for you through networking.
Yeah.
But first, as you said, you need to have clarity of role before you then talk to people about what you'd like to do, or else you'll just be having these conversations, so many conversations, but they're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And this is a common problem also if you're not prepared. If you have a coffee meeting, you ring someone, or you're lucky enough to get a meeting with somebody. You've asked for maybe 20 minutes or thereabouts, and you're meeting with your contacts. Now, if you haven't prepared a list of questions, and it doesn't need to be many, it can just be 3 or 4 good questions. If you haven't prepared a short introduction statement for yourself, so that that person gets a bit of an idea as to what you've done and why you're talking to them, it's very hard to have a really good conversation and get to where you want to go and have an outcome that you want. And for the other person to walk away thinking, yes, I've added value to this person. And if you don't have that, it becomes a coffee meeting where both of you walk away and you think, okay, well, that was nice, good cup of coffee, but what have I actually learned? Or how have I contributed? So it's very important to have an agenda. It's a business meeting.
Yes.
Have an agenda. Have your questions prepared.
Yes.
And always, always, always ask for a referral or two. Because once you're talking about what you're looking into next and why you want to make a transition, you also want to talk to a number of people, not just one.
Yes.
And thank you notes. That's sometimes overlooked, isn't it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you notes, thank you cards. Yep, very powerful.
Yes, and of course following up. Another thing that's overlooked and can be part of this and should be part of the strategic marketing plan is a spreadsheet. Who have I talked to? When did I talk to them? What did I talk about? What did I learn from them? Who did they introduce me to? And when do I follow up? And the follow-up is so critical, because if you don't follow up with people, if you don't let them know of progress, if you don't let them know what you've learned, and when you've landed a new role, you're basically seen as a hit and run networker.
Hit and run networker. I have seen individuals at networking events, they hold a bunch of business cards and they're literally hit and run networking. You rather have a few conversations, meaningful conversations, than have a hit and run networking.
Oh, absolutely. And if you're looking at events, for instance, you can't have a 60-second introduction about yourself. So you really need to practice that 30-second one. And in that, you need to talk about who you are, what you've done, where you're going next, and what you're looking into, perhaps, if you can, if you have enough time, and what interested you in the networking event, but get people talking about themselves. That is the best way to engage with someone, to get them talking, and then you can talk about yourself.
That's beautiful. What's one question you recommend people to ask at a networking event?
Well, I would ask them a personal question about what brings you to the event. Is there a particular topic here that you feel is of real interest to you? It can be not what do you do by way of work, but what is your background or profession, perhaps. But anything personal, or you can just have general conversation openness. But it really depends on the event. So if it's a professional development event rather than a networking event, then the topic is usually one that is a pretty good way to segue into something else. And if it's a speed networking event, which I must admit I'm not a fan of, then you really haven't got time to ask any questions. You just basically introduce yourselves and move on.
Yes, I really like your ideas so far. So many great ideas. And I will summarize what I've learned from you in a second. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Only that I always recommend people plan ahead, because networking is never a spontaneous event. It is not something that you can do without thinking. It is something you have to really think about first before you actually reach out to someone. Even with your friends, it's easy to assume that your friends know exactly what you do. But you'd be surprised how many times even friends don't understand and haven't asked the question. So explain to me what you do and how you do it. So it's important to be very, very well prepared before you reach out to important contacts, and to really ask yourself, as part of the preparation, um, what am I wanting from each of those contacts? How can they help me? Can they give me company information, job information? Can they give me industry knowledge that I may not have done enough of? What is it people can do? But everybody can give you a referral to someone else, either internally or external to their organization, because we all know people outside of our sectors.
Yes. So I'll now conclude with what I've learned from this session, and hopefully that would recap and help everyone else who's listening to remember the lessons learned today. Heidi, I think the very first step of around identifying your target market, exactly what is the field that you want to get into, the role, the industry, so mapping that out, thinking about it strategically. And when you have that clarity and that confidence in your clarity, then you will be then meeting with professionals within industry, do your research, have a marketing plan that you work, that you actually support your clients in creating that marketing plan. That's amazing. It's hard work. Having a beautiful spreadsheet that you can actually document throughout the time that you do network, who you've been speaking to, what was the conversation about, what did you learn from that conversation, and then when next time you speak to that person, you can then reflect with them that this is what I've learned from you, and building on that relationship. Having the 30-second pitch ready to go, knowing what you're going to say, having an agenda in a meeting. So when you make ensure that all of your networking meetings are actually meaningful, with purpose, and to achieve outcomes. And always ask for a referral at the end of a networking call or meeting. Does that summarize it all?
Summarize it very well.
Thank you. I'm sure there's more in all the points that you've listed, and I've really enjoyed listening to you, Heidi, and I hope all the listeners have enjoyed it as well. I'll provide Heidi's contact details in the detail of the podcast. So please stay tuned. There will be other podcasts coming up. Thank you for following this podcast, and I look forward to our next meeting.